Boruto TBV Vortex Chapter 25 has just been released, and yet again Ikimoto and Kijimoto have cooked, as this chapter is absolutely beautiful. Something that we didn't really anticipate taking place, but something that was definitely a breath of fresh air, as what we do end up seeing in this chapter is the build up towards the next arc. And obviously, Momoshiki and Boruto right now is a big conversation of this chapter, but there is a lot that actually takes place. But one thing I am convinced of is that we're slowly starting to see the writing being made, the plot points being developed for Momoshiki's return in Boruto's body. And it's really happening in a way that I would have never imagined. But let's first start off this chapter like we usually do. And this chapter cover, the more I look at it, the more I love it, because we really see a quite proportional outfit that Himawari has. I am somebody that really enjoys these type of outfits, especially the flared pants and the belt. Ikimoto and his belts again, I really love it. And this one is the most unique belt that we have. It's more of a modernistic belt. We see it look more like maybe a chrome heart belt, some of the belts that you would probably see from a designer brand. And this is something that we've seen Ikimoto be able to do consistently. I like the fact that we're seeing characters switch outfits. This is something that differed a little bit more from Kijimoto, as Kijimoto wouldn't do it so often, but I'm really happy that Ikimoto chose his own path and own way. We had Kawaki that got an update to his outfit, and we now have Himawari that has one too. I'm quite curious to see if the others are going to get a new character design. But we can really see some cool details, the fact that she wears a symbol that is obviously driven from the fact that she is aware of Kurama being inside of her. We have her having gloves like Boruto, which showcases her bond with Boruto. Even though everything is telling her that Boruto is the enemy, she still chooses to believe in Boruto and still chooses to remember him by having a glove that is quite similar. We've already seen from previous interviews, even concerning the likes of Sarada, how her outfit was a reflection of Boruto and the feelings that she felt towards Boruto and him leaving. So this is what we end up getting. The title for this cover is To Those Two Girls, and the side text that we receive is Boruto and the others fled from Jura. What is the next movement stirring in Konoha? And now we are in Konoha. We have Konohamaru, Team 10 and Himawari who are now ready to bring back Moegi. One thing that I really do like seeing here is that we didn't waste any time at all. We just jumped into what was important, allowing us to see exactly how the torso bulb works in bringing back a character. And that's what we see. The torso bulb is placed in the heart area of the person and is inserted into the tree, then leaving a symbol. After that symbol appears, a bit like a titan, they end up blowing off steam and then Moegi appears. So that's how you bring somebody back to life using the torso bulb. And we have a Moegi who's capable of talking just after that. One thing that I do love seeing is Boruto really representing this act of the Shadow Hokage. Hated by everybody, but he is in the distance still making sure that Konoha is safe, still making sure that everything is proceeded as planned. As if Shinji was to appear out of nowhere, Boruto would have helped to deal with it. He didn't just abandon them and give them what they needed, but he made sure that everything was successful, as the Shadow Hokage would do, protect the village but from the shadows. And now we end up going back to Gaara, and we have Gaara who is currently being hospitalized. He is not in a dire state, as stated by Kankuro, saying Gaara is doing fine as well. He's badly injured, but it's not anything life-threatening. And now we have Shinki that also returned. And one thing that I really like that Ikimoto does here is a bit of a flash forward. We don't have to see Shinki necessarily being brought back. It would have been a waste of a panel and would have made the chapter a little bit slower paced in a way that wouldn't really be necessary. And that's what I like with Ikimoto. He knows when to make sure that things are happening off screen and when to make sure things are happening on it to keep the pacing quite consistent and flowy. Continuing, we now have Shikamaru who has been called up by his chief, so he will probably have a conversation detailing everything that is taking place, and we already know that his position is quite delicate due to the simple fact that they had Boruto in custody, and under Shikamaru's supervision, Boruto ended up fleeing, and the daimyo was definitely not happy about things that were taking place. But continuing on with the chapter, we go to Moegi. Sakura makes a return to the manga again, and we get to understand a little bit more about the state of people who are coming back after they receive their soul thorn bulb. They are in a state of malnutrition and their chakra hasn't fully been spread out to their entire body. This is due to the fact that the Senju were basically draining their chakra, and since they were not constantly eating, obviously their body would be malnourished. This is kind of interesting because malnourishment can definitely kill someone. So the longer and longer Sasuke is a Senju, the more damage his body will end up taking, which is something that is very important to note, as it really explains why Boruto is in such a dire state and needs to come up with a solution right now. Because with Kashinkoji, he is fine if Sasuke dies, if it means that it guarantees that Jiraiya ends up being taken down. But for Boruto, he wants to save those people. He doesn't view them as simple pawns in a scheme that will allow them to defeat the threats of this world, which is a very interesting thing to think about when it comes to the divide between Boruto and Kashinkoji's philosophies. But we see a conversation between Konoha and Moegi, where Moegi is essentially saying that she's sorry for making them go through so much trouble. But that's not too important. What we end up seeing next is a conversation between Sarada and Sumire. And what I really love here is that although Sarada obviously is feeling the awkwardness, is feeling the tension between her and Sumire, she is still the one now who initiates the conversation to have a discussion between her and Sumire. And in this conversation, not only do we see some amazing panels, and this place right here, the place where Boruto and Sarada hugged, the place where Boruto ended up fighting Mitsuki, the place where Boruto, Sumire, and Sarada ended up having their conversation about Jiro, this place is starting to become a little iconic, and this is one of my favorite places in Boruto. In Naruto, it was definitely the swing in which we see thousands of times, but here in Boruto, I really like that they keep going back to this place. It makes this place hold a lot more meaning to me now that we keep seeing it over and over again. But they're basically hashing out everything that took place, with Ida who is paying attention as she loves the drama, where we have a Sarada who says sorry for everything that happened and her being quite insensitive. And that is definitely true. The one thing I would say that I agreed was the fact that they kept calling Sumire class rep. It would feel a little bit dehumanizing to be always called by a title instead of by your true name, especially when it comes to your friends. So I really like the fact that Sarada ended up admitting to that and apologized. But we had a Sumire who did the same too. And this is something that we see quite common in actual relationships when it comes to friends, and I really like the approach that Ikimoto takes. There's no grandiose moments in the sense that, oh, somebody is not dying, but we're seeing a realistic approach to somebody's character. Not something too flashy, too big, too monumental, but two characters who are hashing out their feelings for one person, which is something that does end up happening in real life, but is never something that should necessarily break down a friendship. And this is how we're seeing them come together. I know that a lot of people probably enjoyed this scene just simply due to the fact that it was very realistic, and the way they took care of this problem is something that is quite admirable. But it just reflects the inner state of Sarada. Still, my personal opinion on Sumire, I wish to see a little bit more about her. What exactly is her purpose in the story? But with Sarada, especially after awakening the Moegi Sharingan, we can clearly see the self-understanding that Sarada now possesses. She is capable of understanding who exactly she is, the love she has for Boruto, her desire to remain a friend with Sumire, and her desire to be Hokage. All those things are who she is, and it is okay for her to accept it, as it is what will allow her to become a better Hokage. A Hokage like Naruto that everybody can admire, not because he chose to become this perfect being, but because she worked through her mistakes and rose to this level, becoming inspirational. That is what Naruto represented. His entire story is inspirational. And here with Sarada, we are starting to see a similar attitude and stance being taken when it comes to her character. So I really am enjoying this right now. So now we have both characters that are acknowledging their personal feelings and may the best win. Essentially, that's what Sumire says and is the conclusion of this chapter. And in my personal opinion, some people might say it's not that deep, but these are the moments where art transcends normal comprehension, where it invokes a certain level of feeling from the people who are reading it. And that's the same thing that I got here. When Sarada and Sumire are holding hands and are walking back to the village after they have resolved their conflict, smiling back at each other, we can clearly get a sense of femininity, like the girl version of Boruto and Kawaki giving each other a fist bump. Even as a guy, those feelings have been conveyed to me by the art that Ikimoto has simply created. Now we end up going back to Himawari, who is training in the Uzumaki household. She ends up going into her inner plane where she is able to fight with Kurama. They are essentially battling, and in that battle, we are seeing how Himawari is struggling, and I won't lie, Kurama is a bit of a harsh teacher, as he says that's not right. Why don't you get it? Listen, when you punch, don't try and use your leg strength to jump. Instead, use your chakra. All of these are techniques which require you to build up your chakra control even more than a normal shinobi. And what we're currently seeing is a technique that Kurama is trying to teach Himawari. This could be a fighting style that Kurama is trying to teach, or it could be the building blocks to an ability that Kurama is trying to showcase to Himawari. But the basic gist of this conversation is to describe this. Himawari has to understand that she is now more of a biju than she is of a human, which is directly what Kurama ends up stating. Which means that the way she is capable of fighting, she doesn't have to go off the stance of that of a human. She is now one with the biju, meaning just like the biju, she is chakra. And with chakra, we can see how Kurama does it and the other Tail Beast interpretation. They can expand their reach using chakra, as we've seen with the chakra cloaks, and they're able to perform abilities that are simply not possible as a regular shinobi. So what Himawari has to do right now is improve her imagination and change the way she views chakra and how it can be used, as she is now a completely different entity. And Kurama is kind of fed up with Himawari as she doesn't really understand, and he says, okay, it's it for today and we're going to train another time. And Himawari's kind of mad at that, but I really like their relationship. The relationship of Kurama and Himawari is one that is really heartwarming in my personal opinion, and I would have never imagined it to be the case. At first, didn't really like the fact that she had Kurama. I didn't think it was like a plot hole or anything, but it wasn't something I thought was ever going to happen. But the more and more I'm seeing this and the route that Ikimoto is taking, it is something that I really enjoy. And now we end up going to Boruto, who is watching everything that is taking place as the older brother, and we see him smile. And it's just those little details that make Boruto's character even better to me. Him deciding to watch over everything that was taking place, with Moegi being brought back. Him deciding to go and watch Himawari, not go to Himawari and talk to her, as he knows it would cause more complications, but simply enjoying Himawari being safe and sound and living a decent life. But now he must make a hard decision, and that is to go and talk with Momoshiki. And we end up seeing Momoshiki in this plane that is identical to that of what we saw when Momoshiki ended up giving Boruto the karma. And in that dimension, we have Momoshiki who is laying there. Momoshiki who really appears like he is unbothered, with just too much aura, with just too much swagger. Everything he does just looks too cool in my opinion. But he says, what a turn of events, to think that you would come to visit me on your own accord. And Boruto continues with his usual speech, but he says, yo, freeloader, sulking as usual? And then Momoshiki says, once again, you failed to die. You only continue to live your comfortable life. My despair has hit rock bottom. When you were killed by Kawaki, I should have just let you die. My reincarnation is not possible now that I can't take control of your body. I've lost my place to live. My soul wishes for one thing, for you to perish so I can escape, for the erasure of my existence. And Boruto doesn't really reply, and he's like, cool, I heard you, but before that, I've got something I want to talk to you about. Just once, would you lend me your power? And Momoshiki is disgusted by this. He says, don't crack jokes, boy. Be gone before my sight. And Boruto says, just listen. I know good and well that deals go in two ways. Which is where Boruto drops the bombshell. If you can defeat Jura, then at that time, I'll give it to you. This body, all of it will be yours. And that's what is the bombshell. We see that Momoshiki, this entire time, he wasn't really looking at Boruto. If you pay attention, didn't really look at Boruto that much. But when Boruto said that, it really caught Momoshiki. And Momoshiki was like, yo, okay, we might have a deal somewhere. This is interesting. And I have my own personal thoughts about this, to be honest, of what is going to be taking place. And if it's actually going to happen or not, I really think it will. But I'll obviously be discussing that in a future video. So make sure to subscribe and drop a like while you're at it. But the final page of this chapter is this. We have a Sumire and Sarada who essentially discussing the fact that Boruto doesn't know that either of them loves them. And that's simply my go Boruto. He's not focused on that. But one thing that is very interesting when it comes to that is, of course, Boruto is not focused on that. Boruto is a guy who really sees himself dying. And because of that, he can't really love either of them, which is kind of a hard pill to swallow, especially for these two. And my prediction, if they were to ask me what is going to work, I think neither of them are going to get Boruto, in my personal opinion. The way the story is going right now, especially what happens in this chapter, Boruto really seems like at the end of the story, like everything simply points to Boruto dying. And I don't know why the story has to make it so sad, but it really is pointing towards Boruto ending up dying or just ending up alone. And it's going to be a very interesting way to see things take place. But the side text says, for the sake of his mission, he sets out on a dark path. What will Momoshiki's response be? And that's where the chapter ends off. And I'm really curious to hear what are your personal thoughts on this chapter. This chapter is a 9 out of 10 to me. It's just amazing. Boruto, there's something about this series that any other series but Naruto is not capable of making me feel. And every time I talk about Boruto, I'm usually including Naruto in it, unless I make the distinction. But Boruto right now, it's on a generational run. I haven't seen this from any manga before, and I'm really loving everything that I'm seeing right now from the Boruto series. But that's it for me today. Hit the like button, subscribe, let me know your thoughts, comments, and concerns in the comment section below. It's been your boy Dynasty, and I'm out, bruh.